the majority apparently, but anyway, some of you are studying international relations, I suppose, and maybe philosophy of policy. I will try to bring you new elements about this subject by starting my talk by a little philosophical approach of the concept of sovereignty. Sovereignty became a subject for political science in the 16th century with two key philosophers. One of them was Jean Bodin, and the other one was Althusser. Those two persons thought about sovereignty according to the notion that sovereignty should be limited and sovereignty should be thought as something which might be dangerous if we are not clear about who owns this sovereignty. Is it God? Is it the people? Is it a state? And if you go through the text of these two philosophers, it is absolutely clear that they are the founders of all the political science of the modern time. Another important moment was 3 centuries later, after a lot of wars and a lot of revolutions, of course, a man called Ernest Renan pronounced a talk, maybe something similar like the one we have today, and the subject of his talk was Qu'est-ce qu'une nation? What is a nation? It was in 1882, and in this text, still very much relevant today, he underlined that a nation is not linked to events in the history of the nation, is not linked only to language, religion, or tradition, but there is something else into a nation. I will try to find a quote from him. A nation exists by itself. A nation exists by itself, and not only through historical events or historical feeling about one's own identity. If we take France, for instance, it's both a Celtic, an Iberian, and a German nation. It is not something purely French. This is very much relevant, especially in a country like yours, where there is apparently, as far as I can see, an obsession for historical roots. Who are we, Hungarians, and so on. According to Renan, nation is not something that should be digged in the soil of history. It's a feeling of belonging to something. And of course, a nation is not only defined by borders or language, as I say, it is defined by many other things. If you take now another approach, which was, let's say, more popular in other corners of Europe after the French Revolution, you can read that sovereignty belongs to the people. And sovereignty was supposed to be the key word of the socialist approach of the world through a number of writers who claim that sovereignty belonged to the people. But then who decide about the rule of law? Is it the people or the authorities that have been elected by the people or sometimes designated by a minority in the name of the people? This is a main question. Now, I will put aside all those elements, historical background, and focus now on another dimension of this topic, which is security linked to sovereignty, by questioning the so-called globalization globalization can be seen as a direct threat against sovereignty, because the aim of the people that are called the globalizers is to somehow destroy sovereignty of small states, to implement some kind of worldly approach of politics, or absence of law, freedom of capitalism, and so on. So is this a security issue? From my point of view, a world can be international, it cannot be post-national. I don't think that we are going to see the vanishing of nations in spite of this movement of globalization, and I don't think that we should give in to the American way of thinking, which is more or less the IBM and Google way of thinking, which is you are all stupid, provided that you buy our products, we are happy and the world will go on. This kind of approach is not going to overcome, and there will be more, I think, movements of resistance against this global approach of the world. In the US, but not only in the US, in some other countries, you have now a new philosophical movement called the transhumanism, which is exactly promoting this kind of global approach. And this so-called transhumanism basically says that human is not anymore a limit. Human is just some kind of object with whom you can play, especially in order to get rid of eldernness, get rid of death maybe, and it's an approach which contests the limits of human beings. Transhumanist people are the ones who are promoting the replacement of spare parts of the human body, who promotes the idea that sexuality does not matter anymore. The main point is to be able to fabricate, to produce new human beings through labs, techniques, and that it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. The main point is to be able to transcend, to go above the roots of human beings. This philosophy, of course, is very much in line with the idea that there is no difference between any races, any countries, any nations, that we are all part of a global system of consumption and destruction and utopia. So, if you take some distance from this point of view, the conclusion is that for those people, the principle of competition is superior to the idea of some kind of solidarity. Competition is the rule of the game, and therefore the strongest will win. The people will be able to get more money for getting better spare parts for their bodies. The nations, or the vanishing nations rather, who will be able to invest more for the replacement of nature by something different, artificial. Those people will overcome. This is more or less what they have in mind. Now, let me go back to security in this context, because whatever we build the world of tomorrow, there will remain some issue for our own personal security. And I cannot avoid coming back to what happened in my country last year and this year with a number of terrorist attacks. In 2015, the terrorists attacked caricaturists, journalists, killing 11 of them in the Charlie Hebdo office. And that was a very brutal message for the country, who produced people like Rabelais, Montaigne, Voltaire, Diderot and others, who have been somehow the promoters of freedom of speech and freedom of opinion. By this assassination, the message was clear: no more freedom of speech, we will not tolerate free expression. Secondly, there was later on in the year an assassination of Jews. 3 young kids in Toulouse, and then an attack on a cashier supermarket. And this was again a message in a country, France, who was the first one in Europe to emancipate the Jews, to allow them to have special rights equivalent to any human being's rights. That was the second message. And thirdly, the third main attack, was against people who were attending a concert in the Bataclan, more or less 1 year ago. By attacking a music center and by killing people who were attending a concert of music, the terrorists sent a third message, which was no more freedom of the art, no more freedom of appreciation about music. You are not allowed in the so-called Islamic world of the future to play music, to enjoy music, and also to sit down at a cafe freely. So we are clearly observing a growing threat on our way of life, our way of thinking, from a group of people who have decided to destroy this civilization in the name of something which is not a nation, which is above nations. Actually, the fabricated word of Islamic State is wrong, because there is no such thing as a state in Daesh or Al-Qaeda or whatever. There is only one key element, which is everyone, every human being should kneel down in front of God, and there is no more freedom for anyone who, except for the one who respects truly the so-called God of the 6th, or the mythical God of the 6th century, with primitive approach of life. So this is a major threat on our civilization, and the question is now, are we going to put forward enough means to fight back this terror network? Unfortunately, in my country and in many other countries, people have not really realized the dimension of this threat, and there are still some people who are allowed to speak in mosques or in some corners of the suburbs, preaching hate and discrimination, humiliating women, and threatening the family life in a traditional, so-called traditional way of Europe. And if we don't react against this new threat, the whole discussion about human rights, about freedom of speech, about gender studies and whatever is coming from the traditional rule of law will be gone, because there will be no more freedom at all. No more freedom to speak, to be a man or a woman, no more freedom of expression. Everything will be under the control of a few fanatics who will rule what is good and what is bad. So there is indeed a serious moment, for a serious challenge for our society. Do we want to keep our way of life or not? Do we want to protect our values, or are we going to slowly give in to this barbaric approach? And this is exactly the moment where we are now in Europe. I think personally that it's a very pessimistic conclusion I will give, that if we don't react in a more significant way, our way of life might be threatened by those people. So there is a challenge. Of course, some people will tell you freedom of religion is more important than laicity, and God is a supreme value, and blah, blah, blah. We will see, but once you have priests taking over the freedom of expression, you are in serious danger. We have never seen in history science coming from religious people, but always from rationalist people, scientists who gave us a right to have electricity today and to think that the planet is a round one and not a flat one. Thank you very much.